Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hola, cariocas. Are you sleeping? I have a tough time. 3:30 in Rio means siesta. So I have 1 hour to try to make you awake. Can we pre-launch the presentation, or what I'm seeing here is not the right stuff? What are you seeing there, guys? Logos. Okay, let's stand, everyone. Let's stretch. Shall we do yoga? You heard that my parents were from India, so let's do some yoga. Stretch, stretch, stretch. It's bad for the body for staying 3 hours on a row. Stretch, stretch, stretch. And then you go on the right side or on the left side. Don't hit your neighbor. It's yoga. It's supposed to be Zen, cool. Now, don't sit, please. This is a unique moment where I think we should thank the translators and the technical team. Otherwise, they are doing all the backstage work. The interpreters, translators are doing a fantastic work, so let's thank them. We are in Rio! Cariocas! Thank you. Have a seat, feel at home. I hope you can hear me. I feel like I'm shouting too much. Am I? Are you okay? So, you saw me this morning as president of IXDA. I happen to do other stuff in life. IXDA is one small part. Architempo is my design agency, and what I'm busy with is, of course, design. This morning we talked a lot, or you heard a lot about design in different ways. Mark talked about his 12 principles. And what we'll do this afternoon is try to go in the why. Mark and Felipe talked about methods. Nicolas shared about teamwork. And I'm interested in trying to understand why are we doing all this. On this slide, you can see that I have 4 hats. In fact, I have a 5th one, which is much more important, my family. All of us, we have families here, and we are spending 3 days, 4 days with this Interaction Design Conference Association. So thank you, all of you, for spending the time here. What we'll do, Ula, what happened? Technical team, we thank you. Hola, un, dos, yes. Un, dos, tres. Is it still raining outside? No? Because I was thinking this morning, it's good, it's raining, you'll be in the room. Otherwise, you'll be in Ipanema Beach or Copacabana. You see. So, but you are here, that's the good news. So I have 4 hats here. Institut Paul Bocuse in French. Bocuse was a 3-star Michelin chef, and I'm working with cooks and hotel managers. I have another hat, which is Pechaccha. Everybody knows what is Pechaccha night? I think there is a Pechaccha in Rio. So it's written Pechacucha, but it's pronounced Pechaccha, Pechaccha, Pechaccha. Can everybody tell Pechaccha, 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 Pechaccha? The Japanese way. Sao Paulo, where are the Japanese from Sao Paulo? Are there any? Good. Pechacha, pechacha, pechacha. Pechacha, pechacha, pechacha. Rio, you are sleeping. How does it work, this one? Back, next, back. Interaction design, I can't use this one. I'll come back to this one. Are we serious? Can someone help me? He doesn't want to help me. Technical team. Yes. Design begins always with a narrative and gets concrete through interactions, artifacts, systems, infrastructures, experience, and stories. This is the sentence you can find on my website. And what I'll try to do in 45 minutes, I'll try to go in between these lines. My challenge is I will need 2 hours. I have quite lots of material, so I'll go quickly. Everybody knows this person? Yes? No? For those who don't hear, who is it? Nana Vasconcelos. I was backstage to Nana in Brussels 30 years ago. It took me 30 years to come to this country. I was backstage to Chico Buarque, Gilberto Gil, Gismonti. So for 30 years I was dreaming I need to come to Brazil. And here I am finally. What was magic with Nana was the ability to play with tempo. So let's take 2 minutes. You are 1, 2, 3, 4. This morning you had one-to-one interaction. What I would like to do is group-to-group interaction. And we'll see how you behave. So when I say this, all this group stands in one. Are you ready? Then I'll say this, this, and this. And we'll have to do a wave. Are we ready? 1. Everybody stands. So, yeah, you are so quick. Great. No, it's great. So that was prototyping. We are designing, guys. So they will do that. Then you do the same. You sit down, of course. Huh? Otherwise, the wave won't be there. Copacabana, remember. Huh? Are we ready? Then you, then you, then you. Prototype has been done. Let's do more. Hey, no siesta. That was my homage to Nana Vasconcelos. He was able to have 7,000 people doing waves. I'm nothing, but I thought, okay, coming to Rio, respect to Nana. Let's go back to interaction design and all this. IXDA. Who's coming to Seattle? February 2019. 1 only? Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get ready. There are some tickets left because we'll continue the conversation. Who was busy with World Interaction Design Day? Some of you, next year we want to see all the room. September 25th, remember the date. That was World Interaction Design Day in 2018. We are having a global partnership with Adobe, and we want to make sure that on the global planet, World Interaction Design Day shares what we are busy with. Is audio okay? Because sometimes I have this bizarre. Yes, can you hear me? Yep. You are my feedback signal, huh? You scream if something goes wrong. You have seen how Latin America was already quite active. I want to see the map completely full. 140 local leaders, you have the energy. Seattle, Design in the Wild, February 2019. This is the program. An Interaction Design Education Summit, workshops, interaction conference, 3 days, a local leaders retreat, a student design charrette, and an award ceremony. This is happening in February 2019. February 2020, it will be in Europe. What I would like to see from all this crowd is much more awards being submitted. You do so many fantastic works in this part of the world. We are proud of your work. Be confident and share that with the world. So my talk will be, in the coming minutes, trying to make sure that voices of Latin America are more prominent. We miss your voices. We need to have your stories. We need to have multiple stories. IXDA is also busy with what we call the Montreal Design Declaration, and we are talking to many organizations in the world to make sure that design is high on the agenda of organizations. And tomorrow, midday, IXDA board will share with you some of the insights. So I'll close here my IXDA chapter and move to the real stuff, design configurations and narratives. Narrativo, storytelling. What is storytelling? How can storytelling interact with design? This is a complex question. And all the talks we have been hearing so far have got in between lines dimensions of storytelling. Everybody knows this guy and his dog? Yeah. How do you say that in Portuguese? Chin chin. In Francais, Tintin. In Spanish, Tintin. This guy is a kind of famous, world famous. And I happen to be in one of my previous life, I was the head of new media of that publishing company. So my job was to take storytelling from comic books and put that on the web in exhibitions and stuff like that. So this is what will be driving the thinking on design. From comic books, how are we moving to storytelling in different spaces, on screens? This is the guy which was mentioned by Adriano, Paul Bocuse, 3-star Michelin chef, 60 years, he was called the Pope of French cuisine, gastronomia. So I'm professor there and I'm teaching design to cooks. So this will be the other stream of our thinking. Storytelling on one side, food making on the other side. The underlying is what we began to do, pechakcha. You still remember what it is? Japan. Yes. Stronger. Yeah. So what's the meaning of pechakcha? Blah, blah. The sound of conversation. When everybody says pechakcha, we see the sound of conversation. That's why I was asking all of you to say pechakcha. We are storytelling animals, and we are bounded by time. Some of you has got this fantastic object. This is the outcome and the output of our relation to time for many of us who are technology bounded. More intuitive, more intelligent, more you. But you remember in the presentation, I'm coming from India. At least my parents are coming from India. India and Brazil, we share the same relationship to time. So what is written on this? This is called the Ish Watch. Because this conference begins at 3-ish and not at 3. My meeting is at 10-ish. My flight is at 12-ish. And so this designer has made a watch where all the are a little bit ish. So our relationship to time is culturally bounded, and it's driving our relations to space, to place, and to time. And the topic of this conference is expanding frontiers, and time is something which is elastic. So we look at time. Remember, the name of my company is Architempo, architecturing tempo. And my strong belief is that we as interaction designers, we are playing with time as a matter. And playing with time as a matter is complex. You have rituals, you have routines, and we have to understand how do we behave with time. Behaviors without understanding time patterns is something we can't cope with. What was the ending of our first speaker this morning? We need to do stuff together. And that's why with Nana Vasconcelos we are trying to have interactions in group. Because one of the challenge we have with design is we tend to design from human to machine, one human to one machine. And as designers, we need to think about humans and machines. Internet of Things, 10,000 devices. Each of us here now has got 2 smartphones on average because of family, traveling, business, blah, blah. So we need to understand this. Design, if I have to summarize in one visual, is this one. All the rest is bullshit. Yes? No? If you show this, then you can begin to play with. Now, how old is this? If we begin to think. 2,000 years ago, in philosophy, we had a guy coming from Greece who talked about ethos, pathos, and logos. If we take these 3 concepts, ethos, pathos, and logos, we can apply them to storytelling, we can apply them to design, and we can apply them to many things. How does it translate into today's design language is something we'll go through. So remember, ethos, pathos, logos. I know philosophy at 3:45 in the afternoon in Rio is quite tough, but okay. We need to try to understand what is behind design. Because our issue with our design activities is often we have only part of the story. We are busy occupying one part, we are partial. And there are plural dimensions. And we don't talk enough about these plural dimensions. And Mark this morning was showing all these models, and he was telling that we need to move into plurality. Design is about choosing. I guess all of us will agree with that. Now, choosing is very difficult. So Nicola was with his chair. To make the chair, designers had to choose material, shape, and stuff like that. And then what do? You are sitting on your chair. But we, as interaction designers, we have to make people enabled to choose. And that is something much more complex. How are we enabling choosing is something that we'll try to unbound. I was talking about the necessity to move to plurality. if I have to be very brutal, 20th century was about marketing and management, monoculture. 21st century, we need to wake up. We need to move in what we call pluriverse. And we have fantastic thinkers in Latin America who have been writing about pluriverse. If you don't know them, let's talk and let's go into that. We need to be proud about the thinkers and the makers of LATAM and show to the world that there are inspirations which are coming from this part and going to the world. We need to stop copy and paste Silicon Valley. Sorry for Silicon Valley. Yes or no? So, yeah, Silicon Valley does good stuff, okay, sometimes. Sometimes less good. Unintended consequences of design. Everybody knows about that. So that's the focus. Interaction. We talk a lot about interaction. There was a question this morning about the urban dimension of design. We need to think about navigation. How do we navigate in multiple scapes, at multiple scales? So if we combine navigation and interaction, like now I'm getting dizzy navigating, trying to see all of you, because I don't want to disrespect the one who are in my back. So, but navigation is complex, and we don't spend enough time. Information architecture do spend some time, but today, if you tell to tell to your boss that you are an information architect, it's no more sexy. That was sexy 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Today, you need to say the fucking word, which is UX. If you don't say UX, the recruiter doesn't understand what you're doing. So we'll go into that. So design and narrative. Design of narratives. Narratives of design. So what I would like us as a group is try to think, how do we move from one narrative of design to multiple narrative of design? There are multiple narrative of design. We can go back 2,000 years ago, 3,000. There are work which have been done which are connected to the design world. Design was not invented in 1750. That's bullshit. Those who are connecting industrial design and industrialization are looking at the world in a very limited way. And I think we need to move beyond. And that is what I mean by we need to expand the narratives of design. The best for the most for the least was the conclusion of Felipe this morning. How are we articulating this? Narrative and design. We have a bunch of assumptions. How are we playing with the assumptions? All designers, we are coming with assumptions. And when we talk about our jobs, we need to unbound the assumptions. Affinities, we need to interconnect stuff. And this is looking at patterns. Affordances, we need to see what are the signals we'll give to our potential users and stakeholders so that they can afford all this design offering that we are giving. So if we put all this together in terms of what are the questions we need to ask ourselves behind, we need to be agnostic, we need to be at ease with abstraction, we need to be astonished, we need to play with ambiguity. So these are some of the dimensions which are driving our design methods and approaches. And if we play with this, then we are getting into questions of today, automation and autonomy. All of us, we are talking a lot about data and design of automation. Are we speaking enough about autonomy of our users, of our stakeholders? Yes, remember the talks. Employees need to go back into the loop and other stakeholders. So we need to re-question assumptions. We need to rethink how we are shaping stuff. And stuff are no more only one. shaping at multiple levels with different types of structure, physical and digital, but also emotional, re-questioning infrastructure. The challenge we have if we look at our societies is that we are living in 21st century with infrastructure which have been designed in 19th century, with management and administration process which has been designed in 20th century. Look the way you are doing your transaction. This is the same stuff for years and years. Now, those who are coming with payment systems for 2 days, they are fighting against redesigning infrastructure, talking to policymakers, thinking about how to construct new ways of interacting, articulating shape with frame. Someone talked about framing this morning. Our job is to unframe and connect that to instruction, construction. So our job as designer is to think about new frameworks, in a nutshell. Thinking about new frameworks is very difficult, because when we talk about storytelling, often we don't talk about or enough about causality. And we interconnect notions and ideas, and we build causality quickly. Causality is connected to choosing. Remember, I mentioned to you the notion of choosing? So I think I'll skip this one. And we talked a lot this morning about different ways of looking at design. And I think it's good for your story of design to remember what we call the design orders. There are design of signs, ILA18. This is the 2 dimension. There are design of things we take. There are design of places in which we are. And there are designs of interactions we are doing with stuff and with environment. This is part of our knowledge. Now, at IXDA, we use also this way of looking at design. Design is good for connecting, for disrupting, for empowering, for engaging, for expressing, for optimizing. This is a way where you as design teams can talk with your management, with your clients, and say, we are designing for this, designing with the verb. There are other ways of looking at design. Design is about analytical thinking combined with categorization, with synthetical, and these are part of our building blocks. But I said I won't spend too much time on methods. I'm trying to go deeper. And as interaction designers and as IXDA, we're trying to also to make sure that there is what we call a matrix for competencies for interaction design, where we try to see what are the balances of different competences in order to have management or recruiters understand what is behind the word interaction design. So this matrix is gonna be used next week in Taiwan. It was used in April in Paris to try to understand with educators how we can align on a common language. And I hope that in the coming months we can do the same in Latin America and try to have a shared language. This morning I heard the word common sense, and my thinking was common sense is quite uncommon. Because when you go to your management and you say, I'm a designer, my design team did that, this is common sense. They'll ask figures, hard facts. And then we are getting into the uncommon, the tough conversation. And that's why we need to build tools for critical making. And by critical making, what do I mean? Prototyping which is argumented, both qualitatively and quantitatively. And you have seen in the service design bricks, pillars, the importance of argumentation. And we are back to reframing, to structuring, to thinking about the future. Because design is about things which yet don't exist. The future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed yet. And this was written by a science fiction writer, William Gibson. Some parts of LATAM are in certain futures, and other parts are in other temporalities. How can we inspire and enrich? This is a question which we can also put with the past. Let's try not to forget some insights we have from the past. Everybody knows John Kolko, Interaction Design Communities. He has been conference chair, he has been speaker. And John Kolko, you just Google on his name, he has been publishing quite a number of stuff. We need to possess a great intellectual capacity for complicated problem solving, for dynamic inquiry related to technology, for empathy of the human experience. So that is our common shared knowledge about design. But I would like to challenge ourselves about the notion of experience, especially for Spanish speaker, Portuguese speaker, French speakers. The notion of experience needs to be connected to expectation. Are we designing experience, or are we designing stuff in order to feed the expectation? That is a question we need to work on. In French, there is a confusion between experimentation and experience when we do the translation. I'm sure it's the same with Latin and Portuguese. When we say UX, we are talking about stuff which have been so-called put in place, but we are not controlling the shaping. So we are back to this one. What we are designing, is it? But maybe let me stop for a second and try. Everybody knows Escobar in Latin America. Pablo. Who doesn't know Pablo? But here I'm not talking of Pablo, I'm talking of Arturo Escobar. Who knows Arturo? Arturo Escobar is a fascinating thinker, coming from Colombia also. And he's stating that the problem we have in 21st century, because of 20th, is that we have been brainwashed by the notion of individuality. And in Latin America, we have this magic force of the communities. And that is why Interaction Latin America is so big and we are so many here. The ability to have communities of people talking to each other and making stuff together. How can design be inspired by that today? Is a question I'm addressing to you all, LATAM. We are missing this dimension. And Arturo Escobar has been writing about that a lot, inspired by the Zapatista movement and some others. But this is a deep area of knowledge that we need to put back in the narratives of design. He's also claiming that we need to rethink this notion of so-called North and South. Yesterday I was talking to some people here and they say, yeah, in Brazil things are underdeveloped. I say, come on, forget. Maybe we should say that in Brazil things are so developed that we need to rethink how to put the right infrastructure with that. Especially with these political moments and so forth. We need to reframe our thinking. And Escobar is telling, okay, if we change our lens, which is a design attitude, maybe we will rethink how to reshape the infrastructure of our countries in this part of the world. Remember, I'm coming from India, I'm born in Congo, and I've been spending lives in some different parts of the world. I think that we need to move beyond the Western-centric metaphor, the Silicon Valley, and we need to come with stories which are shaping our ways of making stuff. Otherwise, we will miss some boats. And that is important. So we need to design. The word by itself is not enough. It's design as, design by, design of, design for. And we need to combine all this in order to say, okay, the universe is not made of atoms, but it's made of stories. And that is where I'm coming back to storytelling. We are sharing stories. Experience is about stories. And we are designing stuff in order to remember good moments. These are stories. We are trying to interconnect people and places. Now, people, I would like to put people with S and place with S. And our job of designers is to rethink the frameworks in between places and people. And work on these 3 layers, which are interconnected. I don't give any hierarchy to that. Physical, cognitive, and social. When Arturo Escobar is talking about the communities in Latin America, it's about the social dimensions. When you are playing video game by yourself with a screen, you are into the cognitive and the physical. Now, some of you might argue that with the massive video games, you are doing some social communities and stuff like that. Yes, so let's get inspired by that and put that into our ways of designing. So I come always with this U. Is it util? Is it utilized? These are the questions we are asking in design. How is that interconnecting people and places? Now, have you heard about NBU? Is there anyone from Google in this room? No? Or the person doesn't want to tell that they are from Google? Or there's no one from Google? Google has got a special unit which is called NBU. Now, what is NBU? Is there anyone from Uber? There should be at least one. Uber did a work few months ago, which is connected to NBU also. Uber Lite, the innovation of Uber Lite has been partly designed from India. And then it got expanded to some other test region. Correct me if I'm wrong. So what I'm trying to convey with that is that there are some innovation which are coming from south to south, if we use this north-south metaphor, and which are influencing global. And the Uber Lite example is one which will relate to everyone. When you are lost in India with your smartphone and there is too much sun and you can't see what is there, or you have low bandwidth and you still want to use your app, you need to rethink your assumptions. You are no more in a 4G environment and stuff. So what I'm trying to share with this map has got one specificity. In place of square meters, square kilometers, it's looking at the number of inhabitants. You see how China and India are, of course, big. Tons of innovations are happening there, and they are influencing the ways. And what is interesting with the Uber Lite example is this innovation coming from with another narrative, with other assumptions. NBU is about the next billion users. Companies like Google, like Uber, and others have got their NBU units, trying to understand where is technology, where is design shaping our near future. And they are coming back to basics, this diagram, and re-questioning many stuff. And coming back with this question, of course, all of us know this, but do we practice enough the answering to these questions? We saw a number of presentations this morning who are focusing on the how. And here I'm trying to push ourselves and go into the why. And my assumption here is that we need to look more than time and space. We need to look at tempo and place. And storytelling is the one which is making the glue. And we as designers, we are storytellers. And we are working on this kind of glue. And this glue is complex. It requires us to go deep into immersion and understand the modalities of engagement. And these modalities of engagement are complex. And we need to clean number of assumptions. Are you okay, guys? I see at least 3 people sleeping. Yeah, I'm in immersion, I'm watching everyone. Shall we stretch again? No? No, let's continue because I have only 11 minutes left. So let me speed. So assumptions, remember my 2 ways of looking at time? The ish Indian time and the techno time. So assumptions are things which we find in storytelling. These are the tools we use now to share stories. Comic books. I mentioned to you I spend lots of time with comic books when I was working for the publisher of Tintin. Comic books has something interesting to share to us. What do we see on the right side of the image? The small squares and bubbles. This is what you're doing every time with your WeChat, if you are in China, with your FaceTime. You are having conversation. And the modalities of conversation have been described at large in this book. If you don't know Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, I would argue that it is a classic for all of us designers. It's a book on the theory of comic books in a comic book format. But Scott McCloud was commissioned by Google to make a how to use Chrome in comic books model. So what is interesting about comic books is it pushes us into one universe, into immersion, and then asks us to be deep into that. It pushes us in what we call, in storytelling mode, in suspension of disbelief. We need to forget where we are to be in the story. It pushes us to take a point of view. So if we take suspension of disbelief and point of view and we articulate that and we come back to the design world and we put together physical, cognitive, and social, it allows us to come with what Uber did with Uber Light, what number of you are doing with some of your design projects here. And I'll quickly go through some examples. What is a hotel today for people who are 20s and spend their time in youth hostel? Do they want to go in the classical, boring hotel room? Maybe not. So a group like Accor and hotels in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in New York, are trying to come with new ways of engaging people in a combination of hotel and hostel and providing new experience. Because what is a hotel? It's about eating, drinking, sleeping, meeting. Back to basics. How do we design? Are we happy about the hotel? Is there anyone from the hotel industry here? Or no one will raise their hand like the Google one? No? Designers, we have tons of things to do in the hotel industry, in the food industry, because number of assumptions are to be re-questioned. The experience of getting into a hotel, of traveling, of going into a place, of mobility, of using boat, plane, train, are part of the interaction modalities we need to rethink. Everybody knows this kind of customer journey. We saw some examples this morning. What is the weakness? As Mark said this morning, we don't want yet another beautiful customer journey. We need to go in between lines. We need to re-question the assumptions. We need to take into account what John Maeda is telling. All of us, we have in our pocket a device. And what is in the device is changing every second. And that brings me back to digital, connected to physical, connected to time, connected to systems. Remember, we are designing systems and services. Maeda is now the design director of Automatic. Automatic is a company which is here. Automatic is the company who's the parent of WordPress. Anyone knows how many % of the websites on the planet are WordPress run? 33%. 1/3 of all the websites on the planet are run by WordPress engines. What is the specificity of Automatic? 800 people, no one living in the same office and country. It's a distributed organization. What is the specificity of IXDA? 100,000 members, 200 local groups, distributed organization. We are having only one employee. So what I'm trying to show is that zooming in, zooming out, remember principle number 10 of the commandment of Mark Stigdorn this morning? Zooming in, zooming out, zooming in, zooming out. This is something we must be obsessive about. And we need to, we need to think about scale. Scale are so hard to comprehend that we as interaction designers, we need to go back deep into getting the true understanding of time, rules, rituals, routine, and go back to what we call sense-making of the change-making. And that is complex. And the only tool, and I'm happy to be contradicted, I'm happy to be challenged, the only tool which allows the sense-making of the change-making is storytelling. We are storytelling animals. We have been busy with storytelling for thousands and thousands of years. And we need to understand the mechanics of storytelling and make sure that the connection between designing with stuff, with objects, with services are interconnected to storytelling. We need to understand the tension between anticipation and prediction. Prediction is what data scientists are busy with. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, they are working a lot on prediction. And we as designers, we are working a lot on anticipation. How can we combine our expertise of anticipation and make sure that the prediction is not getting boring is one of our contemporary design questions. How do we understand the narrative which is happening now to project ourselves in the narrative which is going to happen next? So you might say that I'm getting into kind of philosophy, abstraction, 4 p.m. in Rio, putting so much questions on the table, breaking your siesta. But if we don't do that here, then we can go and continue, scream, and tell that design is not respected as a profession. And we can continue being brainwashed by managers who don't understand a shit of what we are talking. Then, for the next 20 years, will be what I call in the society of complaint. We talk so much about creativity. I have my rule of 3C. Creativity, creativity, creativity is the word number 1. But creativity is connected to complaint. Everyone is complaining. And complaint is connected to control. So we have this paradox. You remember my diagram of Venn? Creativity is something we are all desiring. Complaint is what we are telling. And control is how the system is taking us and putting us under control. And design is, and we have the luxury to be designers, is the one professional practice where we can disbalance this power of control and complaint and put back creativity on the table. There has been some work in what we call transmedia storytelling, in which I was busy, and I won't have time to go through, where we are interconnecting AR installation for museums with mixed realities, trying to understand how IoT is interconnected with behaviors and time relations. Try to re-question gamification modalities. So I'm just putting this to go back to the question of physical, cognitive, and social, and put that in resonance with my 3C. Let's stop complaining. Let's start doing. Let's try not to be slave of control. Let's try to push creativity. And in LATAM, there is so much positive energy. Remember Nana Vasconcelos, Gilberto Gil, Chico Buarque, and all these people, so creative, so powerful. How do we bring that energy into our design stories? How do we navigate in new ways and interact? And don't be stupid like that lady, sorry for her. Because that's the risk. If we continue designing many of the stuff as we are busy designing, then we'll be lost in whatever. Thank you very much.
Question here.
Olá.
Are you speaking in English or in
Português.
In Portuguese. Yeah. Yep.
Olá, tudo bom?
Olá, tudo bom?
Parabéns pela apresentação. Foi uma ótima apresentação para fazer a gente refletir um pouco.
Obrigado.
E eu gostaria de fazer uma pergunta em relação às habilidades que você considera muito importantes e que elas estão faltando um pouco no mercado de design. Então, assim, você comentou muito a respeito do storytelling, que nós somos criadores de narrativas. E, além desta, quais são as outras habilidades que um designer pode trabalhar e desenvolver para ele se tornar mais relevante no mercado de trabalho atualmente?
I'll try to... You don't mind repeating on the translation team? Do you still remember, or... You don't mind repeating the question so it can be retranslated? Because there was...
a minha pergunta é sobre as habilidades que são mais importantes atualmente para um designer se tornar relevante no mercado de trabalho atualmente. Você comentou bastante sobre storytelling, mas também eu gostaria de saber outras habilidades complementares para o designer atualmente.
So skills required and some suggestions. We have, storytelling is a soft skill. Or people think that it is a soft skill, but it requires some trainings and time to be able to be mastered. The other skills I would suggest, a number of them were mentioned this morning, is the ability to be both analytical and synthetical. Our education is very much based on analytical knowledge and not enough on synthetical. So how to develop synthetical skills is by prototyping, by making, by trying, by combining. And coming back to the skill notion, and the challenge is that we can spend 3-4 hours trying to unbound that. The challenge is how are we going to use story as a mechanism to enable synthetical ways of looking at stuff and opening up question raising. What is design? If we look at all the early phase of design, it's the ability to ask questions. How is ability to ask questions developed? By opening up curiosity. How is curiosity being pushed? By asking ourselves, what if, what if, what if? And so, to try to answer to your question, but I won't be able to answer in a nutshell, is developing curiosity requires us to look at many stuff. I'll use one metaphor. Food. Who makes food in this room every day? If you look on a yearly basis, you do food 70% the same stuff. How are you opening up your interest in exploring new areas in food making is something we have to push ourselves and begin to explore and being influenced. How are we doing that? Social skills. Do our education system allows enough social learning sharing? Maybe not. So these are the skills which we need to complement as designers. Social connection skills. We learn by simulation, by sharing. Our education system is one-to-one rather than one-to-many. And that's why I was asking us to do this kind of group interactions. HMI, human-machine interaction. The challenge with human-machine interaction in terms of assumption is human as one person. And that is because of our education and our way of working. So I'm just touching some elements, but we can talk about that after this. I'll be staying here till tomorrow evening. So some of us, if you want to go deeper into some questions, we can exchange about that. Any other question? I know that I didn't answer everything, but
now
yeah.
I can tell.
I see a hand there.
Over here, to your, in front of you, here. Oh.
Maybe is it possible to put some more lights in the audience?
Okay, here. Alok?
Where? There.
Yeah, here.
You see, I'm lost in navigation. Yeah. Are you
Okay, no
speaking
problem.
in English or in Portuguese?
Yeah, in English. I will ask in English. You were mentioning earlier the difference between anticipation and prediction. And I would like to hear more about it because, for instance, Apple's CEO is telling that the phones, the way we know it, the way we know the phones is going to change in 5 years, and everything is going to be more related to augmented reality. So how do we as designers can anticipate and to learn, or how do we know what we need to learn to anticipate those changes or those predictions that people like him is saying?
So one way, and again, anticipation is something which is connected to our ability of knowing what is not known. And I don't want to get very abstract, but there are things we know. There are things we know that we don't know. And there are things we don't know we don't know. Yes, the knowledge space is split. We know that we don't know. Then anticipation can be easier because we go to our neighbor and we say, we don't know, but we think that we should know. And that is helping to feed our anticipation scape. Now, if we don't know that we don't know, are we completely stupid? Maybe not. And that is where social knowledge may help us to minimize the we don't know, we don't know. And that is where my statement of Latin America and the way you have the ability to have community knowledge can help to mitigate the risk of having bad anticipation. Now, prediction on an algorithmic point of view is based on assumptions which are made by data scientists based on the past. And designers, we are working on what could be in the future. And luckily, as human beings, we have been accumulating knowledge for, let us say, 7,000 years. And we are able to find patterns and try to use that for anticipation. Now, what is Escobar telling, in a nutshell, is that the 70 years we spend now between 1950s and today, we destroyed so many things about knowledge we accumulated for 7,000 years. Let's look at the food industry. Everybody knows now that sugar, excess consumption of sugar, is bad for the body. All our food systems is full of sugar. And we need to rethink and redesign food systems. So if we take sugar anticipation and prediction, we are addicted to sugar. No need of more prediction on that. And we need to re-challenge all these kind of questions. So what I'm trying to do with your question about anticipation prediction is do lateral thinking, zooming in, zooming out, which we do all as designers, and opening up the scope of possibilities. What is possible, what is probable, what is feasible, we are playing with these layers. But I'm sure, I see that there is applauses written on this screen, so they are telling, get out of that place. No, that is what I need to read. So let's continue the conversation off stage, and thank you all of you, and enjoy IXDA.